This is a new type of video that we haven't uploaded on this channel before. From now on, every once in a while, we'll be sharing a different kind of content alongside our regular videos. These videos will cover a wide range of topics, including what's happening in the world today, how different systems and industries work, current events, politics, new technologies, emerging trends, and many other interesting subjects that help us better understand the world around us. The goal is to explore ideas, explain complex topics in a simple way, and discuss things that are shaping our everyday lives. If you enjoy learning something new and seeing a different perspective, we think you'll enjoy this series. Now let me tell you something they don't teach you in school. They don't put this in the textbooks. They don't make movies about it unless they're selling you the opposite. If you want to understand why the world is on fire, you don't look at the headlines. You look at the footprints. And the footprints all lead back to the same place. Let's start with a man named Muhammad Mossadegh. Remember that name. He wasn't a dictator. He wasn't a terrorist. He wasn't some fanatic in a robe waving a gun around. He was the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran. Elected by the people. You know what his crime was? You want to know what was so dangerous about this guy that the defenders of freedom had to crush him? He believed that Iran's oil should belong to Iran. That's it. That's the whole rap sheet. He looked at the Anglo-Iranian oil company, which was just British Petroleum wearing a fake mustache, and he said, "My country's soil, my country's resources, my country's wealth, and for that sin, for the audacity of democracy when it doesn't serve the right masters, Britain and the United States engineered a coup in 1953. They didn't negotiate. They didn't respect the vote. They ripped him out and installed a puppet. And then, generation after generation, they had the gall to tell you through every Hollywood script, through every news broadcast, through every smug op-ed that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Think about that. A democratically elected leader says, our oil belongs to us, and they destroy him. But we're supposed to believe they're the good guys. But Iran was just one stop on a much longer train. You want to know how the Middle East got so messed up? Get a map. Not a new one, an old one. Look at Kuwait. Stolen from Iraq by the British. Bahrain? Stolen from Iran by the British. The United Arab Emirates? Carved out of Saudi Arabia by the British. Qatar? Sliced out of Bahrain by the British. Pakistan and Bangladesh. Split out of India by the British after 200 years of looting, after draining $45 trillion from the subcontinent. 45 trillion. And then they drew a line. The partition of 1947, one line. Overnight, millions killed. Families split, perpetual chaos, and that wasn't an accident. That was the product. Every border dispute in West Asia, every blood feud in South Asia, it's not a bug in the system, it is the system. The British Empire didn't leave behind stability. It left behind a trap. And whenever any of these countries tried to climb out, tried to build something, tried to prosper, what happened? A new war. Iraq, bombed twice. Libya, flattened. Afghanistan, occupied. Yemen, starved. Syria, gutted. Lebanon, bombed. And every time they sell it to you as democracy, as human rights, as freedom. Next time someone asks you why migrants are flooding into Europe and the West, tell them the truth. Tell them because you bombed their homes, you sanctioned their children, you starved their grandmothers, and then when they ran, you called them a threat. You propped up dictators you could control, you looted their resources, and then you used Hollywood and Netflix and Elon Musk's Twitter feed to convince the world that they deserved it. Now let's talk about the nuclear hypocrisy, because this one's a real gem. Iran signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel refused to sign it. Iran submitted to inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Israel refused. Iran has no declared nuclear weapons. Israel has between 75 and 400 nuclear weapons. So which one is the existential threat? By the logic of the so-called international community, by the logic of the preemptive strike, Iran should have bombed Israel years ago. Israel is the nuclear rogue state. Israel is the one with the undeclared arsenal. But no, the narrative is inverted. The nuclear-armed aggressor gets to call the non-nuclear nation the threat. And why? Because the truth isn't just inconvenient, it's buried under blackmail. You want to know why American politicians dance when Israel pulls the strings? Look at Epstein's island. Little American children were raped under that monster's watch, and Israel's Mossad videotaped all of it. every sick, compromising moment. So they could own the politicians. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's the operating system. The leaders of the United States didn't just sell out their morality, they were filmed selling it. And then they turned around and told you Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. They bombed a nation of 9 million people into the Stone Age over a lie. 20 years later, oops, no WMDs, my bad. 1 million dead. But nobody went to jail. The weapons contractors got rich and the truth got a burial at sea. And speaking of burying truth, let's talk about July 3rd, 1988. The USS Vincennes, a United States Navy warship, fired missiles at Iran Air Flight 655, a civilian airliner. Over the Persian Gulf, 290 civilians murdered. 66 of them were children. The plane was on a normal commercial route. It was broadcasting civilian identification signals. It was unmistakably a passenger jet, and they shot it down anyway. And you know what happened after? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The United States never formally admitted legal responsibility. No sanctions, no tribunals, no crime against humanity headlines. Now flip it. Imagine Iran shot down an American passenger plane over the Gulf of Mexico. Imagine Iran bombed a school in Los Angeles and killed 153 school children. What would we call it? We'd call it evil. We'd call it terrorism. We'd call for war. But when the empire does it, it's a tragic mistake. When the empire does it, the minions on social media still post flags in their bios and pretend America cares about Iranian human rights. And they do it while the body count piles up in Gaza. Don't look away because this is where the mask really falls off. According to the United Nations, as of early 2026, 71,803 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. 21,289 of them were children. Between October 2023 and October 2025, at least 20,179 children were killed. That's 30% of all conflict-related fatalities. 5,031 of those children were under the age of 5. 1,029 were under the age of 1. 420 were newborns. And that's just the confirmed dead. Save the Children estimates that 5,160 children are buried under the rubble, with an unknown number in unmarked graves, never recorded. In the West Bank, Israeli security forces killed 213 Palestinian children, 206 boys, 7 girls. But the UN report gets worse, much worse, much worse. A 14-year-old Palestinian child was playing outside. They shot him. He lay bleeding for 45 minutes. Israeli soldiers came over, lit cigarettes, and watched him die. They recorded it on camera. The boy tossed his cap to show he was still alive. They did nothing. His mother tried to run to him. They shot at her too. An ambulance tried to approach. They aimed a laser-guided weapon at it and scared it off. The soldiers took his body and never returned it to the family. A 15-year-old boy walked out of his house waving a white cloth, unarmed, surrendering. They shot him in the leg with a sniper rifle. After he fell, they shot him in the neck. His 20-year-old brother ran to save him. They shot him in the chest. Their mother went next. They shot her in the hand. The father tried to drag the bodies inside. They kept firing at him. The sniper rifles have a 1,200-meter range. These shots were fired from 200 meters. This wasn't accidental, this was sport. A 10-day-old baby, 10 days old, was in his mother's lap being breastfed. A quadcopter drone flew in and shot the baby. These drones have night vision, HD cameras. They saw exactly what they were doing. They saw a nursing mother and a 10-day-old infant, and they pulled the trigger. I've seen the Holocaust movies. Schindler's List. All of them. And I'm here to tell you, what the Zionists are doing right now makes the Nazis look like amateurs. At least the Nazis were honest about what they were. These guys do it while calling themselves the victims. While world leaders fly in to shake their hands and take photos, while the West sends more weapons. And you want to ask if a country that does this has any right to exist in civilized society? I'll let you answer that one yourself. But it didn't start yesterday. Go back to June 8th, 1967, the USS Liberty, an American signals intelligence ship in international waters flying the American flag, clearly marked. Israeli jet fighters strafed it with cannons and napalm. Torpedo boats blew a hole in its side, 2 hours of sustained attack. 34 American sailors dead. 171 wounded. Israel said, "Oops, mistaken identity." The survivors, the crew members, the officials who weren't bought and paid for. They said what was obvious. The ship was under Israeli aerial observation for hours. The flag was visible. The attack was deliberate. And what did the United States do? They covered it up. They silenced their own soldiers. Because you don't criticize the proxy. You don't criticize the asset. That's what Israel is, an asset, a proxy. And if you want to understand the machine, you have to understand that America didn't invent this game. They inherited it from the British Empire. From 1815 to 1914, Britain was the global cop. They were at war for all but 15 years of that century. They ran the world through proxies. Because when you're the most powerful country on earth, you don't send your own kids to die in every ditch. You find a local ally, you give them weapons, capital, political cover, and you let them do the destabilizing while you play the good cop. That's the proxy model. And for decades, Israel has been America's proxy in the most resource-rich, strategically vital region on the planet. We give them billions in military aid every year. We give them weapons, we veto every UN resolution. And in return, they keep the Middle East unstable enough that the forever war never runs out of customers. Let's talk about that machine because this is where it gets really interesting. Simon Dixon broke it down into 3 parts. The FIC, the financial industrial complex Wall Street, the banks, the crypto lobby, the asset managers like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. The MIC, the military industrial complex, the war economy, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, the defense contractors. And the TIC, the technological industrial complex big tech, AI, data, surveillance, the digital control grid. In countries like China, Russia, Iran, the government sits on top. Capital answers to the state. In the United States, it's flipped. Capital sits on top. The politicians are employees. They're pinatas. George Carlin called it right. Symbols for the symbol-minded. You beat them up every election. You vote for the blue team or the red team and nothing changes because they were never in charge. The true votes aren't cast at the ballot box. They're cast with capital. And your 401k, your ETF, your target date retirement fund, you forfeited those voting rights to BlackRock. They use your money to support the policies that crack countries open. And there are 4 ways to crack a country open. Number 1, sanctions. In 2018, the US pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. Germany, France, Britain wanted to keep trading. The US said, nice, but choose. Them or our financial system. European companies fled. Iran's economy choked. Number 2, cut them off from the dollar. In 1988, the US told Panama, nice country. Shame if the cash stopped moving. They froze assets, blocked payments, pushed money into Federal Reserve escrow accounts. Panamanian banks closed for 9 weeks. The economy collapsed. Number 3, go to war. Pressure them until inflation explodes. The people hate their leaders, they revolt, and you install a new guy who lets you rebuild. Number 4, the long game. Use media, entertainment, culture, fund the opposition from inside. Agitate for revolution in the name of democracy and human rights, and let the country tear itself apart. 4 different methods. Same goal. Collapse the economy. Privatize the resources. Suck them into the financial machine so you can park your money in the S&P 500 and retire fat and happy at 67 while the rest of the world eats rubble. But here's the catch, not every country can be cracked. Some are too big, some have powerful allies. Some don't need the dollar. Some have nuclear weapons. And some, like Iran, have geography, they have the energy, they have the Strait of Hormuz. They can wait. And they know something that the machine is just starting to figure out. The next phase of the global economy needs stability. You can't build $1 trillion AI grid in a world that's always on fire. Data centers need power. Supply chains need to work. Shipping lanes need to stay open. The forever war model and the AI model want opposite things. The MIC needs chaos, the TIC needs calm. That's the civil war inside the profit machine right now. Look at what's happening. Trump signs a deal with Iran to end the war. Within days, Israel is bombing Lebanon in violation of the agreement. Iran says, fine, we're closing the Strait of Hormuz. No more oil for the world. Let's see how long your markets last. Now, why would Israel defy the President of the United States? Because Israel and the US aren't separate. They're two arms of the same body, serving the same capital. But the body is getting a new brain. The tech world wants stability. They want to build. They want to own the ports, the data centers, the energy grids, the payment rails for the next 30 years. You can only bomb a place once. But if you finance the rebuilding, you collect interest forever. That's a better business model than war. So they're changing the face. JD Vance. You know who launched his political career? Peter Thiel, $15 million for his Senate run. Vance worked inside Thiel's world. Thiel got him into Trump's orbit. Now he's vice president. Vance is the clearest political embodiment of the tech world in power today. And suddenly, he's criticizing Israel, standing up to Netanyahu. Why? Because if you're transitioning from the war model to the AI model, you need a face that looks strong and independent. You need an exit narrative. You need everyone on the same page saying, maybe Israel is a liability now. That's not courage. That's branding. And Netanyahu, that man is knee-deep in scandals. His government is in chaos. Protesters flood the streets. Corruption charges hang over his head like a sword. He doesn't survive by solving anything. He survives by changing the subject. Wages? Prices? Justice? Forget it. He talks about Iran. Always Iran. It's the oldest trick in the book. Give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt. Only now it's called diversionary foreign policy. When your popularity crumbles and the streets erupt, you don't fix the problems. You point to a bigger threat. You don't offer justice. You offer an enemy. Look at who Trump sent to negotiate with Iran. Jared Kushner, real estate developer. Steve Witkoff, real estate developer. Kushner bought nearly 10% of Phoenix Financial, one of Israel's largest insurance companies. He's the single largest shareholder in a major Israeli financial institution. The US government has been infiltrated by Israeli assets at the highest level. The Secretary of State isn't even in the room. Why? Because this isn't diplomacy. It's a real estate deal. Rebuilding is good for business. The last time these two men lured Iranian negotiators into a building, it was drilled and bombed. That's who represents the United States. And Trump? That man-shield is facing criminal charges in his own country. Facing irrelevance, so what does he do? He pours gasoline on the Middle East and lights a match. Not because America is threatened, because his ego is threatened. But here's what's truly shameful. Trump is exactly who he always was. A monster, sure, but at least an honest one. The real villains are the people around him. The senators, the generals, the diplomats. They watched him publicly announce a genocide on millions of people, and they couldn't find a single vertebra between them to stand up and say enough. History won't remember Trump as the monster. Monsters are honest. History will remember the enablers. The people who knew, who had the power, who had the choice, and decided their careers were worth more than the world. And the forever war? Let's be clear. In 240 years of existence, the United States has been at war for 224 of them. 800 military bases in 80 countries. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Gaza. The list goes on. The US isn't a superpower. It's a war machine. And a war machine needs conflict like a junkie needs cocaine. Without war, defense contracts dry up. Without war, donor money stops. Without war, politicians lose their power. Only Trump's family, Netanyahu's family, and the investors in Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon get rich. While your kids, your future generations, live and die like cockroaches for these maniacs. So when they tell you they're selling democracy, ask them what the price is. When they tell you Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, remember Mossadegh. When they tell you Iran is the threat, remember the USS Liberty. Remember Air Air 655. Remember the 14-year-old bleeding out while soldiers smoked cigarettes. Remember the 10-day-old baby shot in his mother's arms. Remember the 15-year-old with the white flag? Remember the father dragging bodies while they kept firing? Remember the 5,160 children under the rubble? Remember the 213 children in the West Bank? Remember the 34 Americans on the Liberty? Remember the 290 on the Vincennes? Remember the 153 schoolchildren bombed? Remember the WMDs that didn't exist? Remember the 45 trillion stolen from India? Remember the line that split millions? Remember the coups, the sanctions, the starvations, the proxies, the lies. And then ask yourself, if this is democracy, why does it always look like a gun pointed at a child? If this is freedom, why does it need so many prisons, so many borders, so many bombs? If this is the rules-based order, who wrote the rules? And who do the rules protect? The game is rigged. It always has been. The only question left is whether you're going to keep pretending you don't see it, or if you're finally ready to call it what it is.